Hello, my friend. The world of magic, filled with legends and ancient tales, is opening its gates once again. Tonight, in the Gryffindor dormitory by the crackling fireplace, I will share another story with my friends. Join us, for the magic is about to come alive.
The war was over, and for the first time in years, Hogwarts slept in peace. The castle stood proud again, its towers rebuilt and its fires rekindled. Yet in the quiet corners of the ancient halls, echoes of the past still lingered, whispers of those lost, of secrets left untold. Harry Potter walked alone through the dim corridors, his footsteps soft upon the polished stones. He no longer wore his school robes, but an old cloak of Dumbledore's that hung loosely around his shoulders. It smelled faintly of lemon drops and parchment, a scent that brought both warmth and sorrow. It had been nearly a year since Voldemort's fall. The wizarding world was rebuilding, though scars ran deep. Kingsley Shacklebolt, now Minister for Magic, had offered Harry a post in the Auror office, but Harry had hesitated. Something in him could not rest. That evening, as twilight crept across the Forbidden Forest, Professor McGonagall summoned him to the headmaster's office. She sat behind the grand desk that once belonged to Dumbledore, her expression grave. "There is something you should see, Potter," she said softly. "Something Albus left behind for you." She gestured to the pensive, its silver surface shimmering with thought and memory. Upon the rim, a tiny engraving gleamed in candlelight. For HP, when the shadows stir once more. Harry leaned closer. The memory within pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat. He had seen Dumbledore's memories before, but this one felt different, alive, waiting. With a breath, he touched the surface. The world around him dissolved. He stood once more in Dumbledore's office, though brighter now, and filled with the scent of summer rain. Dumbledore himself sat before Sybil Trelawney, who trembled in her chair, her eyes wide and unfocused. Her voice, when it came, was not her own. "When the Dark Lord falls, and the boy who lived stands victorious, a shadow shall rise beyond the edge of the world. Where the wall meets the cold sky, the flame of the phoenix must burn anew, lest both realms fall to endless night." Harry's breath caught. He had heard of one prophecy, his prophecy, but never this. Trelawney gasped and fell forward, her teacup shattering on the floor. Dumbledore rose slowly, his eyes reflecting sorrow and fierce determination. "So it comes full circle," he murmured. "The boy will save our world, but another awaits." The vision faded. Harry found himself standing once more in the quiet of McGonagall's office, the memory's echo still ringing in his mind. "A second prophecy," he whispered. McGonagall nodded. "It was found among Dumbledore's sealed effects. He ordered it kept secret until the right time." Harry frowned. "The wall, what wall? And the flame of the phoenix?" She folded her hands. "Dumbledore often spoke of an ancient place beyond the known lands. He believed the boundaries of our world were not as fixed as we think. Perhaps," she hesitated, "perhaps he was right." That night Harry could not sleep. The words haunted him. The flame of the phoenix must burn anew. He took Fawkes's feather, once given to him as a keepsake, from his pocket. It glowed faintly in the moonlight, a single ember of gold and red. "Another prophecy," he murmured to himself, "and Dumbledore hid it from me." The next morning he found Hermione and Ron waiting in the great hall, both surprised to see the look on his face. "What's wrong, mate?" Ron asked halfway through a buttered crumpet. Harry set down the feather between them. "I think Dumbledore left me another task." Hermione's eyes widened. "Another task? Harry, you've done enough. The prophecy—" "This isn't about Voldemort," Harry interrupted. "It's something else, something beyond." And so for the first time since the end of the war, Harry felt that familiar stirring, the pull of a destiny not yet fulfilled. Later that day, the three of them returned to Dumbledore's old study. Among the cluttered books and scrolls, Hermione discovered a sealed map, drawn not on parchment, but on thin sheets of enchanted ice. Across its surface shimmered unfamiliar lands, cold and vast, beyond even the northernmost reaches of the known wizarding world. At its heart stood a line marked simply, "The Wall." Beneath it, Dumbledore's elegant script, "Here lies the boundary of magic and death. Seek the flame before the frost consumes all." Ron shivered. "That doesn't sound like a holiday trip." Harry smiled faintly. "It's not. It's a calling." That night they packed their things once more, the cloak, the wand, and the map, and set out toward the northern seas, where rumors spoke of strange lights and colder winds. Unbeknownst to them, in a world far across the veil, the snows were already stirring. The dead marched again beyond the wall, and an ancient magic, older than Hogwarts itself, was awakening. The prophecy of Trelawney had begun to unfold, and somewhere deep in that gathering storm, a single note of phoenix song echoed faintly through the frost. The sea north of Scotland was wild and cruel that season, its waves dark as ink beneath the gray sky. Aboard a modest vessel called the Silver Drake, Harry, Hermione, and Ron pressed on toward the lands whispered of in Dumbledore's final writings. The map's icy surface glowed faintly whenever the ship turned north, as if urging them onward through the mists. The journey was harsh. Rain lashed the decks and wind tore at the sails. Yet Harry could not shake the feeling that something or someone was watching them. At night, when the waves calmed and the stars appeared like scattered fire, he heard the faintest echoes of wings above the sea and a distant cry that made his heart tighten with both hope and dread. "Do you hear that?" he asked Hermione one night as they stood by the railing. She listened for a moment, her breath misting in the cold. "It sounds like singing, or perhaps the wind." But it was not the wind. Deep inside, Harry knew it. It was the same haunting tone he had heard once in Dumbledore's office when Fawkes had sung his final lament after the old wizard's death. At dawn, they reached the farthest point on the map, an island shrouded in constant fog. The locals who greeted them spoke in strange old tongues, and their eyes gleamed with wary recognition when they saw Harry's lightning scar. "A mark of fire," said one old fisherman, bowing his head. "The Red Priests spoke of you, boy of the flame. They said the wall trembles again." Ron muttered under his breath, "Brilliant. We haven't even got off the dock, and we're already in another prophecy." From the island's frozen harbor, the trio followed a trail of ancient standing stones, etched with runes that predated Hogwarts itself. The stones pointed ever northward toward a frozen sea. Hermione bent close to study one of the carvings. "These symbols," she whispered, "they're not of our world. They're Valyrian." "Valyrian?" Harry frowned. "Yes," she said, brushing frost from the stone. "It's an ancient language from a place across the narrow sea, one Dumbledore once studied. If this is true, Then he knew of this world long ago. And so they pressed onward, their ship skimming across ice-laden waters until one bleak morning the mist broke, and there it stood. A vast, jagged wall of ice stretched endlessly from horizon to horizon, glimmering with faint light beneath the pale sun. It was higher than any tower, older than any spell. "The wall," Hermione breathed. "It's real." Ron shuddered. "That thing makes Azkaban look cheerful." They docked their ship at a lonely wooden pier half buried in snow. There were no guards, no gates, only silence and a lingering sense of dread. The wind howled through the cracks like whispers of ghosts. Then from the whiteness figures emerged. Men in black cloaks, their faces weathered by cold and time. One of them stepped forward, his beard rimed with frost. "Halt!" he called, though his tone held more weariness than threat. "Who are you that come to the end of the world?" Harry lowered his hood. "My name is Harry Potter. We seek the flame of the Phoenix." The man blinked. "Potter? Strange name. You're far from home, stranger. Come, the Lord Commander will want to hear this." He led them through a narrow pass in the ice and into a fortress of stone and wood built at the wall's base. Smoke curled from chimneys, and men moved about with tired discipline. At the heart of the keep, the Lord Commander awaited, a tall, solemn man with dark hair and gray eyes that seemed older than his years. "I am Jon Snow," he said simply, "and if you've come seeking fire, you'll find little of it here." Harry studied him, sensing a familiar weight behind those words, the burden of leadership, the shadow of destiny. "There's a prophecy," Harry said. "It speaks of the wall, and a phoenix's flame that must not fade." John's eyes darkened. "Then you come not a moment too soon." He led them to the top of the wall, where the world spread out in blinding white. Beyond the frozen expanse, the land stretched into shadow and ruin. "Something stirs out there," John said quietly. "The dead walk again. We've held them off before, but they come now in numbers beyond count. Fire and steel will not be enough." Hermione's voice trembled. "And Dumbledore. He knew?" John nodded. "An old man came here once, years ago. He said magic flows thin in this world, but not gone entirely. He left something with us, a shard of fire, sealed beneath the wall. We thought it a relic. Now I see it was a warning." Harry's heart pounded. Fawkes. That night they descended into the tunnels beneath the fortress, where blue ice walls glimmered in torchlight. Deep below, in a cavern of frost, they found it a great crystal of flame, frozen mid-motion as though time itself had stopped it from burning out. Inside the ice, faintly visible, was the outline of wings. "Fawkes," Harry whispered, touching the glassy surface. The phoenix's essence shimmered faintly in response, as though recognizing him across worlds. But as his hand brushed the ice, the flames within flickered, and shadows stirred deeper in the darkness. A cold wind rose, carrying whispers that chilled even the air around them. John drew his sword, Longclaw, its pale edge catching the dim light. "They're here," he said. From the far end of the tunnel, shapes began to form, pale figures, their eyes glowing with blue fire. The White Walkers had come. Ron grabbed his wand, muttering, "Brilliant. Zombies. Why is it always zombies?" Harry raised his wand, his breath turning to mist. "No, Ron, these aren't zombies." The first of the creatures stepped forward, its armor made of frost, its gaze colder than the void. The air itself seemed to freeze as it lifted its sword. Hermione's voice broke the silence. "Harry, the prophecy said the The flame must burn anew. The phoenix's light pulsed faintly again within the ice. Harry turned toward it, realization dawning. Then we give it what it needs, magic and will. As the White Walkers advanced, Harry pressed his palm to the frozen flame. "Incendio Maxima," he cried. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then, with a sound like thunder, the cavern erupted in light. The phoenix's fire blazed anew, melting ice and shadow alike. The walkers shrieked as the light consumed them, and the wall itself trembled with life. When the brilliance faded, Fawkes stood before them, reborn, his feathers radiant with gold and crimson, his eyes filled with knowing sorrow. Harry fell to his knees, overwhelmed. "You're still here," he whispered. The phoenix sang once, pure and clear, a note that carried beyond the wall, into the cold, into the night, and beyond the stars themselves. But even as its light spread, John's gaze darkened. "That song, it's a call," he murmured, "and something in the far north is answering. For in the deep frost beyond sight or sound, a new storm was rising, one that neither world was ready to face. The dawn that followed was pale and uncertain, as though the sun itself feared to rise. Smoke curled upward from the wall's blackened stones, and the air still shimmered with the afterglow of phoenix fire. The great bird perched upon a shattered archway, its plumage blazing like living flame against the bleak horizon. Yet beneath its beauty, there was sorrow, a tremor in its song, as though it mourned the world it had once protected. Harry stood beside Jon Snow upon the ramparts, the cold wind tugging at his cloak. The night's battle had left the men weary, though none spoke of retreat. Beyond the wall, silence had fallen once more, but it was not the silence of peace. It was the stillness before another storm. Jon broke the quiet first. "You've brought magic back to the wall," he said, his tone neither grateful nor angry, merely thoughtful. "But I fear you've awakened something else with it." Harry met his gaze. It had to be done. The prophecy said the flame must burn anew. John's gray eyes were troubled. "Prophecies are a dangerous thing, Harry Potter. I've seen men lose themselves chasing them." "I know," Harry said softly, "but sometimes not chasing them costs more." Hermione joined them then, her face pale but determined. She had spent the morning among the scrolls of the Night's Watch, seeking any record of Dumbledore's visit. "He was here nearly 20 years ago," she said, holding out a cracked parchment. "He came from the east, across the sea. He spoke of a veil between worlds, and warned that when the dead rose again, the boundaries of magic would thin." Ron frowned. "You mean this whole mess, the walkers, the magic, all of it, Dumbledore knew?" "Not all," Hermione replied, "but enough to leave a safeguard. The Phoenix Flame. I think he foresaw this." Harry took the parchment. The ink was faded, but one line stood clear. "When frost and fire meet, a bridge shall open, and the world of wizards shall touch the world of men." A bridge. Harry's thoughts raced. The rift between worlds wasn't just magical, it was alive, expanding, fed by the return of the flame. As they spoke, the wall itself groaned, a deep, thunderous sound from within the ice. The phoenix gave a cry and took flight, circling high above the fortress. Its wings shed sparks that drifted down like embers in snow. Jon looked upward. "It calls us north," he said grimly. "Whatever stirs beyond the frost, it wants the flame." That night they gathered supplies and rode through the tunnel at the wall's base. The land beyond was a wasteland of ice and ruin where shadows clung to the edges of sight. Yet amid the desolation, strange lights glimmered, blue and red, flickering like the heartbeat of the earth. Days passed, though time itself seemed twisted there. The auroras above grew brighter, painting the snow with hues of emerald and crimson. Once, while they camped beneath a jagged peak, Ron awoke to find the phoenix gone. Only a single feather remained, glowing faintly with warmth. Harry clenched it in his hand. "It's guiding us," he said. "Fawkes knows where we need to go." By the third night, they reached a frozen lake, black as glass. At its center stood a ruin half buried in frost, columns of dark stone etched with runes that shimmered faintly in the light of their wands. Hermione whispered, "This place feels wrong, ancient, as if magic itself fears to linger here." John dismounted, his sword drawn. "This is where the first men swore their oaths," he said quietly, "and where the dead first rose. The old tales say a shard of the gods' fire fell here, buried in ice." They crossed the lake carefully, their breath fogging before them. As they neared the ruin, a figure stepped out from the shadows, tall, cloaked in red, her eyes burning like living flame. "Do not fear me," she said, her voice low and musical. "I have awaited the song of the phoenix." Harry froze. "Who are you?" "I am Melisandre, servant of the Lord of Light," she replied, her gaze fixed on him. "You are the one Dumbledore named, the child of two worlds, the flame that endures." Hermione whispered, "The Red Priestess. She believes in Aurelur, the god of fire and light." Melisandre stepped closer, studying Harry as though she saw through flesh and soul alike. "Your magic burns differently from ours," she murmured. "Old and pure. It can heal the wound between realms or tear it wide." "What wound?" Harry demanded. "The wall was not built merely to keep out the dead," she said. "It was made to seal a rift, the breach between this world and yours. When Dumbledore came, he strengthened it with the Phoenix's fire. But now that flame has awakened again, and the rift grows." Harry's heart pounded. "You're saying I caused this?" "You completed what was begun," Melisandre said. "And now both worlds tremble. The White Walkers are not the only danger beyond the wall." John's eyes narrowed. "Then what is?" The priestess lifted her gaze to the storm above. "The shadow in the frost, the one who sleeps beneath the ice. He is older than any god you name. He hungers for the flame." As she spoke, the air grew colder and the aurora dimmed. Beneath the lake, something stirred, slow, massive, ancient. The ice cracked with a sound like thunder. Ron stumbled back. "Tell me that's not what I think it is." Melisandre's voice rose above the wind. "The cold king wakes." A fissure split the lake, and from it surged a blast of icy mist. The ground trembled. Out of the darkness rose a colossal figure of frost and shadow, its eyes burning with blue fire brighter than the moon. John shouted orders, but the wind drowned his voice. The creature's gaze fell upon Harry, and in that moment he felt its will, cold, merciless, vast. It spoke without words, straight into his mind. "Child of fire, you bring the breach. You will burn, and through you the flame shall die." Harry staggered, clutching his scar as it seared anew. The phoenix's feather blazed in his hand, answering the creature's call with its own fiery cry. Melisandre raised her staff, light erupting from its tip. "Do not yield, the flame must endure." Hermione shouted a spell, Ron another, their wands blazing. John charged with Longclaw, his sword gleaming like starlight. But the cold king's power was vast. Each wave of his hand turned fire to frost, light to shadow. Harry fell to his knees, the feather now burning fiercely. He could feel Fawkes's essence within it, alive, urging him to act. He pressed the feather to his heart. "Then come, old friend," he whispered. Light exploded from him, golden and red. A cry echoed through the storm. The phoenix reborn in full, rising from his chest in a blaze that shattered the ice around them. The cold king recoiled, its form cracking under the brilliance, yet even as it fell back into the lake's depths, its voice lingered in the wind. "The bridge is open now, wizard, and both worlds shall know my winter." As silence fell, the ice sealed again. Fawkes alighted on Harry's shoulder, weak but burning still. Melisandre's face was pale, awed. "The breach is open," she said. "The worlds are joined. There is no turning back now." Harry looked northward, where the horizon flickered with strange light. The prophecy had not ended. It had only begun, and its cost would be far greater than he had ever imagined. The wind had changed. It carried whispers now, thin, distant cries that rolled across the frozen wastes, like ghosts remembering their own names. The light above the wall burned red and green, though the stars had vanished, smothered by cloud and magic. Harry sat beside the campfire, his cloak drawn tight against the bitter cold. Fawkes perched nearby, the faint warmth of his feathers barely keeping the frost from settling on their gear. Hermione and Ron slept fitfully, huddled beneath their cloaks, while Jon Snow stood watch at the edge of the camp, his sword half buried in the snow beside him. None of them spoke much since the battle at the lake. The vision of the cold king haunted them still. The vast shadow beneath the ice, the voice that had spoken inside Harry's mind. Even now when he closed his eyes, he could feel that chill, a memory colder than any wind. At dawn, the Red Priestess returned. Melisandre moved through the mist like a ghost herself, her red robes untouched by the frost. She carried no weapon, only a lantern burning with a small golden flame. "The breach widens," she said quietly. "Already the wall weakens. The dead will come again, soon." John's jaw tightened. "Then we ride back to Castle Black, gather the watch." "No," Melisandre interrupted, her voice calm but firm. "You cannot fight what is coming with blades and arrows. Only fire and blood can mend what has been broken." She turned her gaze to Harry. "You, child of flame, hold the key. The Phoenix's fire is the bridge between life and death. You must take it to the heart of the North." Hermione stirred awake. "And where is that?" Melisandre lifted her lantern toward the mountains, where the horizon glowed faintly blue. "Beyond the frost fangs, where the first magic was born, there lies the altar of ice. There the phoenix must burn once more." Ron rubbed his hands together. "So we just march into the most cursed part of the North, light a fire, and hope the world doesn't end?" Harry managed a thin smile. "Pretty much." John's gaze drifted northward. "If what she says is true, we'll need more than hope." They set out by midday, traveling over the frozen plains. The journey grew harder with each passing hour, the snow deeper, the wind sharper. The wall soon vanished behind them, lost in cloud and distance. Nights were worse. Strange lights flickered in the darkness, and shadows moved where none should be. Once, as they crossed an ice field, Ron swore he saw faces beneath the surface, men and women frozen mid-scream, their hands pressed against the ice as if begging for a release. "Keep walking," John said grimly. "Don't look down." The days bled together until they reached the mountains. Black peaks rose like spears into the gray sky. and at their base lay ruins of stone, ancient towers twisted by frost, their doors sealed by centuries of ice. Within those ruins they found an old camp, long abandoned. Charred remains of fire pits, broken shields, and a half-frozen banner bearing the dire wolf of House Stark fluttered weakly in the wind. John knelt beside it, brushing away the snow. "My kin fought here," he murmured, "long ago, before the wall was raised." Hermione crouched beside him, her wand casting pale light. "Then these ruins are older than we thought. This could be where the first men made their pact with the children of the forest." Harry studied the walls, symbols etched deep into the stone, similar to those on the map Dumbledore had left behind. "He knew of this place," he said quietly. "He must have come here when he crossed into this world." That night the storm broke. Thunder rolled across the peaks, and the snow fell so thick they could barely see one another. They huddled in the ruins, fire flickering low, while the wind roared outside. Through the storm came a sound, a long, low horn that seemed to come from nowhere, and everywhere at once. John froze. "That's no wind?" The horn sounded again, closer. Then came the scrape of feet across the ice. Many feet. Harry rose, wand in hand, his breath quickening. "They've found us." The dead came like a wave of shadow, eyes blue as glaciers, their bodies wrapped in tattered armor. They poured through the broken arches. Ron and Hermione unleashed spells that flashed against the dark, sending shards of ice flying. John's sword gleamed as he cut through the first ranks, the blade of Valyrian steel leaving trails of light in the blizzard. Harry called out, "Fawkes, now!" The phoenix shrieked, bursting into flame. The fire spread through the ruin, driving back the dead with blazing wings. Yet for every creature that fell, 2 more rose from the snow. Then, amid the chaos, Melisandre lifted her hands. "Lord of Light, protect us from the cold that devours." A circle of fire erupted around them, sealing off the horde. For a moment, silence returned. Then the Red Priestess collapsed, her strength spent. Harry caught her before she fell. "You can't keep doing this." Her eyes fluttered open. "It is not I who holds the fire," she whispered. "It is you." He felt it then, the pull in his chest, the warmth rising beneath his skin. The phoenix's flame lived within him now, woven into his very magic. It was power unlike anything he had ever known, and it frightened him. The storm outside raged until dawn. When at last it passed, the dead were gone, leaving only broken weapons and silence. They buried the fallen of the Watch, who had perished long ago, setting their spirits free with fire. At sunrise, Fawkes took to the sky again, flying ahead toward the mountains. His cry echoed across the peaks, leading them onward. By midday, they reached the mouth of a vast cavern carved into the ice. The entrance was framed by pillars of dark stone, covered in symbols that burned faintly red when Harry drew near. Hermione's voice trembled. "This is it, the heart of the North." A chill swept through them as they entered. Inside, the cavern opened into a great hall of frozen pillars. At its center stood an altar of crystal ice, its surface pulsing with faint light. Upon it lay a figure, frozen, motionless, yet unmistakably human. Harry stepped forward, his pulse quickening. Beneath the ice, the face was that of an old man with half-moon spectacles and a calm, gentle smile. Hermione gasped, "Dumbledore." Harry's heart lurched. No, it can't be. But it was. Dumbledore lay entombed in the ice, his hand outstretched toward a flame long extinguished beside him. Ron took a step back. "Bloody hell, Harry. How is he here? Melisandre's voice came from behind them, soft and solemn. He crossed the veil long ago to seal the breach. He gave his life to bind the worlds together. Harry fell to his knees beside the ice, pressing his hand against the cold surface. He didn't die at Hogwarts, he whispered. Not truly, he came here. As his hand touched the ice, the Phoenix's fire flared within him. The frost began to crack, glowing from within as warmth spread through the chamber. Dumbledore's eyes opened, not in life, but in light. His spirit bound to the ice, stirring one last time. His voice echoed softly through the hall. Harry, you have come far, but the prophecy is not yet complete. The cavern trembled, frost falling from the ceiling like rain. Fawkes hovered above the altar, his song pure and sorrowful. Dumbledore's gaze held Harry's, steady and kind even in death. The flame must pass once more, my boy, for only through its sacrifice can the worlds be saved. The light dimmed and his image faded. Harry rose slowly, tears freezing on his cheeks. He understood now. To seal the rift, the Phoenix's fire must burn again, and with it perhaps himself. And somewhere beyond the mountains the cold king stirred, his army rising once more to meet the dawn. The echo of Dumbledore's voice lingered in the cavern long after the light faded. It was as though the mountain itself held its breath, waiting. The last glow from the ice died away, and once again the chamber returned to shadow and silence. Only the faint flicker of their wands and Fawkes's dim fire gave color to the dark. Harry stood motionless beside the crystal altar, his thoughts heavy as stone. Dumbledore's words rang in his mind like a tolling bell. The flame must pass once more. He had known sacrifice before, but never had it felt so near, so final. Hermione stepped forward, her voice low but steady. If Dumbledore's spirit is bound here, then this place must be the key. He died sealing the breach, and now the wall weakens because the flame is fading. It's the same cycle beginning again. Ron rubbed his hands, blowing into them for warmth. Right, so we just light it up again? You've got the Phoenix, we've got wands. We make some magic, job done. But even as he spoke, the firelight trembled, guttering low. The air grew colder, sharper. The flame on Melisandre's lantern flickered once, then died. No, the Red Priestess whispered. This place does not hunger for fire. It hungers for choice. She knelt beside the altar, brushing frost from the ground. Symbols appeared beneath the ice, rings of ancient runes that pulsed faintly as Harry drew near. It was written in the old tongue, she said, to mend the worlds. The flame must find its heart anew. Hermione looked from the inscription to Harry. It means you, doesn't it? The Phoenix is bound to you now. You're its heart. Harry said nothing. His gaze lingered on Dumbledore's still form, the wise face that had guided him through so many trials. He remembered the warmth of that twinkle in the old man's eyes, the calm beneath his words, even in the darkest hours. To see him lying here, silent and cold, tore at something deep within. Jon Snow stepped closer, his breath misting in the cold. You said there's a rift between the worlds. If it grows wider, it won't stop here. The dead will walk your lands as they do ours. I know, Harry said quietly. Jon's voice was grim. Then we must seal it, whatever the cost. The silence that followed was heavy with understanding. They rested that night in the cavern's outer hall, huddled near the fire. Outside, the wind howled endlessly, carrying faint screams that might have been memory or something worse. Hermione sat beside Harry, her brow furrowed. "You don't have to do this alone," she said. "There must be another way." Harry managed a faint smile. "That's what you said before I walked into the forest to meet Voldemort." She looked away, blinking hard. "And you came back." "Maybe I will again," he said, though his voice lacked conviction. Fawkes gave a soft trill, his feathers glowing faintly. It was not the bright blaze of his prime, but the gentle warmth of a dying hearth. Harry reached out to touch the bird's chest, feeling the slow, steady beat beneath the feathers. "You've always come back too, haven't you?" he murmured. At dawn they began their preparations. Melisandre drew runes in the snow around the altar, lines of fire that resisted the wind. Hermione translated the ancient text from the cavern walls, piecing together fragments of Dumbledore's notes preserved in the ice. "It says the fire must burn through the heart of the veil," she read aloud. "But the veil lies between worlds. If the Phoenix releases its full power, it could tear the rift wide open before it seals again." Ron frowned. "So either we fix the breach, or we blow both worlds apart." "That's about right," Hermione said grimly. Before Harry could reply, the mountain trembled. A rumble echoed through the caverns, deep and distant, as though the world itself were awakening. John drew his sword, the Valyrian steel glinting faintly in the gloom. "They're coming." A cold wind swept through the tunnels, snuffing out their fire. From the darkness beyond came the sound of shattering ice, then the dull thud of countless footsteps. Harry's heart pounded. "We don't have time?" The first of the dead appeared in the passageway, pale, hollow-eyed, and endless. Their movements were slow but relentless, their armor clinking with frozen rust. Behind them a deeper shadow moved, vast and silent. "The Cold King," Melisandre breathed. "He comes for the flame." John stepped forward, sword raised. "Go, Potter. Finish this." "We'll hold them." "John, you can't." But John's look silenced him. There was something in it Harry recognized, the same quiet resolve that had lived in Dumbledore, in his parents, in all those who had walked willingly towards sacrifice. "Go," John repeated, "for both our worlds." Harry turned to Hermione and Ron. "Stay with him. If I don't come back..." Ron shook his head fiercely. "Not this time, mate. We're with you." Hermione gripped his arm. "Always." For a moment, Harry's heart swelled with gratitude and sorrow alike. Then he nodded, turned toward the altar, and lifted his wand. Lumos Solis. Light burst from the tip, filling the cavern. The ice beneath the altar cracked, glowing with veins of molten gold. The phoenix gave a great cry and rose, flames streaming from its wings, circling the chamber. Harry felt the power surge through him, wild, blinding, ancient. The very air seemed to split apart, showing glimpses of another world. Hogwarts under the morning sun, the forbidden forest, the black waters of the lake gleaming in peace. "Fawkes," he whispered, "take it all. Take me with you." The phoenix dived, striking the altar in a blaze of fire. Light erupted outward, searing and pure. The dead howled as the radiance reached them, turning their forms to ash. The Cold King roared, a sound that shattered stone, but even he was forced back as the veil blazed open. For an instant, Harry saw everything. 2 worlds mirrored in flame and frost, bound by a single thread of life. He saw Dumbledore standing beside the phoenix in that space between, his eyes kind and filled with pride. "Courage, Harry," the old wizard said. "It is the oldest kind of magic." Then the fire consumed everything. When the light faded, the cavern was silent. The altar lay shattered, the ice melted, into a pool that reflected the faint light of dawn. Dumbledore's form was gone, and Fawkes had vanished with him. Hermione and Ron stood near the ruins, shielding their eyes. John leaned against his sword, breathing hard. The air was still again. At the center of the pool lay Harry, unconscious, but alive. A faint glow pulsed at his chest, where the phoenix's feather had once rested. Melisandre looked upon him and smiled faintly. The flame has found its heart anew. Outside, the wind had stilled. Across the distant plains, the shadows retreated. The breach between worlds was closing. But far in the north, beneath the deepest ice, something vast stirred once more, a whisper like cracking frost, a promise unfinished. For though the wall now stood stronger than before, magic had been loosed into both realms, never again to sleep entirely, and somewhere, faint but sure, a single note of phoenix song rose once more over the snow. When Harry awoke, the world was still and pale. Snow drifted through the broken ceiling of the cavern, settling softly upon the melted floor. His breath misted faintly, and every sound echoed like a whisper in a cathedral. He felt light, too light, as though he had been emptied of something essential. His scar no longer burned. Instead, a strange warmth pulsed within his chest, steady and calm. He sat up slowly. Fawkes's feather was gone, but in its place, a faint pattern shimmered upon his skin, the mark of a phoenix in flight, glowing faintly beneath the surface. Hermione was the first to notice he'd stirred. She dropped her wand and rushed to him, her face pale with exhaustion and relief. "Harry, we thought—" She broke off, unable to finish. Ron grinned weakly from where he sat leaning against a stone. "Mate, next time you decide to burn yourself into a ball of light, maybe give us a warning, yeah?" Harry smiled faintly, his voice rough. "Did it work?" Hermione nodded. "The breach is closed. The Cold King is gone, or at least banished for now. The wall has stopped trembling. You did it." But even as she spoke, Harry saw the worry in her eyes. Something in the air had changed. The frost no longer bit, yet the light filtering through the ice above was dim and strange, like the last hour before sunset. Melisandre approached, her red robes now tattered, her face drawn but serene. "The flame has been passed," she said softly. "You bear it now, child of both worlds. The phoenix's heart burns within you." Harry frowned. "What does that mean?" "It means," she said, "that you are bound to both realms now. You walk neither entirely in your world nor mine. The fire within you will fade in one world, only to rise in the other. You are the bridge now, living and eternal." Ron stared. "He's what now?" But before anyone could answer, a deep rumble shook the mountain. The ice walls groaned, and cracks spread through the cavern floor. The ground tilted beneath them. "Out!" Jon Snow shouted. "The whole place is collapsing." They scrambled toward the tunnel, slipping on wet stone as the ceiling began to fall. Great shards of ice crashed around them, shattering like thunder. Hermione conjured a shield of light to block the falling debris, while Ron dragged Melisandre forward by the arm. Harry stumbled near the exit, the tunnel ahead glowing faintly from the daylight beyond. A boulder fell, striking the ground where he'd stood an instant before. The roar of the mountain filled his ears. Jon turned back for him, shouting something Harry could not hear. The two locked eyes for one brief moment, and then the tunnel gave way, splitting them apart. Harry fell through the collapsing ice. When he came to, he was lying on a slope of snow under a bruised sky. The The mountain behind him smoked faintly, its peak shrouded in storm. The air was different here, softer, warmer, carrying a hint of pine and earth. He could hear water somewhere nearby, the rush of a river unfrozen. He stood, unsteady but alive. Hermione? Ron? He called, but no answer came. The wind carried only silence. He stumbled down the slope, following the river through a dense forest of black pines. Strange birds cried in the branches, and the scent of moss and wildflowers hung in the air. It felt different, not like the frozen north nor the Scotland he knew. Hours passed before he reached a clearing where an old stone bridge crossed the river. A single lantern burned at its center, and beside it stood a figure wrapped in a gray cloak. "Harry Potter," the man said, turning. His voice was low, his accent unfamiliar, but his eyes were knowing. "You've crossed far from home." Harry tensed. "Who are you?" The stranger smiled faintly. "A friend of the old wizard who came before you. He spoke of you often." Harry's breath caught. "Dumbledore?" The man nodded. "He was here many years ago. He said one day another would follow, the bearer of the flame." He stepped closer, lowering his hood. His hair was silver white, his face weathered but kind. "My name is Brynden Rivers, though men now call me the Three-Eyed Raven." Harry's pulse quickened. He had heard that name whispered by the Night's Watch, in old tales told by the fire. A seer beyond the wall, older than any living man. "You know what happened?" "I have seen much," Brynden said. "The breach has sealed, yes, but time between the worlds has begun to twist. Threads once separate are now woven together. Magic flows where it was long dead. The fire you carry keeps that balance." Harry frowned. "Then why am I here?" The old man's eyes gleamed. "Because the bridge does not close on one side. The veil between the worlds must heal on both, and there is one who would see it torn open again. The Cold King." Brynden shook his head. "Older still, a being of shadow, born from the void that lies beyond all worlds. It stirs now, drawn to your light. If it wakes, neither realm will endure." Harry felt the weight of the words settle over him. "Then tell me what I have to do." The old man studied him for a long moment. "You must travel south to the lands of men. There, beneath the Red Keep, lies the echo of the dragon's fire, the last spark of the magic that built this world. The phoenix's flame must meet it, or all shall fall to darkness." Harry's thoughts raced. South? Through Westeros? Brynden nodded. "The path will be perilous. You will find no welcome in the courts of men, but you will not walk alone." He lifted his staff, and from the trees came movement. Quiet, sure. A dire wolf, white as snow, padded into the clearing, its eyes gold and knowing. "Ghost," Harry murmured. The creature bowed its head, and Harry felt a faint pulse of warmth from the mark upon his chest, as though recognizing an ally born of both fire and frost. Brynden's voice softened. "The fire within you will guide your way. Trust it, but guard it well. Many will seek it, few will understand it." Before Harry could speak, the wind rose, swirling around them. The old man began to fade, his form dissolving into mist and shadow. "Wait!" Harry cried. "What about my friends?" Brynden's voice echoed faintly. "They yet live, but each walks a different path now. You will meet again when the flame calls." The light vanished, only the sound of the river remained. Harry stood alone on the bridge for a long time, his hand over the glowing mark at his chest. The phoenix's warmth pulsed faintly beneath his skin, steady and true. Ghost padded beside him, silent but loyal, He looked southward where faint smoke curled on the horizon. Cities, kingdoms, war. The world of men awaited, tangled in power and prophecy alike. Somewhere beyond that, the true enemy stirred, unseen. Harry took a breath, squared his shoulders, and began to walk. The snow had stopped falling. The clouds parted just enough to reveal a single ray of light that broke through the gray, catching in the feathers of a bird soaring far above. It was not Fox, yet its cry was familiar. A clear, bright note of hope. And as it faded into the wind, Harry Potter stepped into the world of dragons and kings, carrying the last fire of the phoenix within him. The sun had not yet risen when Harry and Ghost crossed the foothills beyond the river. The land before them spread vast and cold, a canvas of gray mist and distant peaks. Somewhere far to the south, beneath clouds and smoke, lay the kingdoms of men. Westeros, a place that felt both ancient and new to him, as though he were walking into one of the forbidden tales whispered at Hogwarts after curfew. The direwolf moved with silent grace at his side, padding easily through frost and stone. Its fur shimmered faintly in the twilight, and sometimes Harry could have sworn he saw sparks of light dancing along its pelt, remnants of the phoenix's magic lingering in this strange beast of the north. They descended into the lower valleys where the air grew warmer and the forests thicker. Streams ran free here, unbound by ice, and he could smell pine sap and distant smoke, the sound of civilization, hammer on anvil, wagon wheels on stone, reached him faintly from afar. He had crossed the boundary of the wall's shadow. He was now in the realm of men. For days, he traveled southward, following the stars and the strange pull within his chest, the phoenix's heart guiding him as surely as the marauder's map once had. He slept beneath trees, ate what little he could hunt, and learned to read the new world around him. There was magic here, but faint and restless like an old song half forgotten. It stirred in the roots of the trees and in the whisper of the rivers, ancient and curious at his passing. By the seventh night, Harry reached a small village on the edge of the woods. Its thatched roofs smoked under the pale moon, and torches burned along the dirt road. The people were wary, their eyes sharp and tired. When they saw the stranger in dark robes with a wolf at his heel, many turned away. He found lodging at the tavern, a low building with a sign shaped like a crow in flight. The innkeeper, a broad man with weathered hands, watched him carefully as he paid with the few coins he'd found in his pack. "Not from around here, are you?" the man said, sliding a mug across the table. "No," Harry replied, "just passing through." The man grunted. "Few do these days. Bandits on the road talk of dead men in the north. Even the crows are uneasy." Harry's fingers tightened around the mug. "The dead won't come again. Not yet." The innkeeper gave him a wary look, but asked no more. Later, when the tavern had emptied and the fire burned low, Harry unrolled Dumbledore's map upon the table. Its icy surface now glowed faintly, the markings shifting like constellations. The southern lands unfolded before him. Winterfell, the Vale, River Run, and far beyond them, the Red Keep in King's Landing. The mark of fire shone there. His destination. He traced the line with his finger, feeling the magic hum beneath his touch. The phoenix's heart pulsed in answer. Ghost stirred, ears pricking. The hairs on Harry's neck rose a moment before the door burst open. 3 men entered. Soldiers by the look of them, though not of any royal guard. Their armor was mismatched, their cloaks torn. The leader, a man with a scar across his cheek, spotted Harry and froze. "You there?" he said sharply. "You came from the north?" Harry nodded slowly. "I did." The man's eyes flicked to the dire wolf, then back. "Then you've seen it. The light that burned on the horizon, fire red as dawn." Harry hesitated. "I saw something." The man leaned closer, his breath thick with ale. "They say the walls shook that night, that a storm of fire and ice tore through the heavens. Some call it a sign from the gods. Others—" He smirked. "Others say it was a witch's curse. Tell me, stranger, which do you believe?" Harry met his gaze. "I believe some things are beyond either gods or curses." The man studied him for a moment longer, then laughed harshly. "Aye, perhaps. Keep your secrets, Northman. But take care whom you speak to of such things. In these times, miracles are feared more than monsters." They left soon after, their laughter echoing into the cold night. Harry watched the flames dance upon the hearth, uneasy. He had seen that kind of fear before, in another war, another world. At dawn, he departed the village. For many days he traveled south through the riverlands where war had scarred the earth. Abandoned keeps rose like ghosts from the mist, their banners long torn. Fields lay fallow, villages silent. Yet amid the ruin, life endured. Children played by frozen streams. Merchants whispered of peace, returning under a new queen. And somewhere far away, dragons had returned to the skies. He felt their presence. Even here, the faint tremor in the air, the heat beneath the wind, fire answering fire. On the 12th day of his journey, he reached the ruins of a great castle, its walls blackened by dragon flame. The locals called it Harrenhal. As he crossed its empty courtyard, the wind carried a whisper, soft at first, then clear as words. Harry Potter. He froze, his wand in hand. "Who's there?" From the shadows of the broken tower stepped a figure cloaked in gray. The air shimmered faintly around them like heat above Summerstone. "Peace," the voice said, a woman's voice, calm and low. "I mean you no harm." She lowered her hood. Her hair was silver white, her eyes violet, and in them burned the faint trace of dragon fire. "My name is Daenerys Stormborn," she said, "and you have something that belongs to me." Harry's grip tightened on his wand. "I think you're mistaken." "Am I?" she asked softly. "When you crossed the breach, you carried with you a fire not born of this world. I felt it. Every dragon felt it. It called to us in our sleep." He stared at her, wary. "You know of the breach?" "I have seen it in dreams," Daenerys said. "A fire that meets the frost. A song of two worlds. The old man with the half-moon glasses showed me the path before he vanished from the light. He said the boy would come bearing the flame of the phoenix." Harry's heart stilled. "Dumbledore spoke to you?" She nodded. "Long ago, before the dragons awoke. He said that when the fire of the old world met the blood of the new, the last war would begin." The wind hissed through the empty towers. "What war?" Harry asked. "The one that will decide which world survives," she said. They stood in silence, two exiles from fate, their shadows long upon the cold stone. Above them, the sky split briefly with lightning, red and gold. Daenerys turned toward the south. "Come with me to King's Landing. The fire beneath the Red Keep stirs again. I can feel it. Perhaps together we can tame it or be destroyed by it." Harry glanced north, where the snow-capped peaks still lingered beyond sight. Somewhere there, Jon Snow and his friends might still be fighting whatever remnants of darkness lingered. He longed to turn back, to find them, but he could feel the phoenix's warmth, urging him onward toward the dragons, toward the fire. At last he nodded. "All right." Daenerys smiled faintly, though her eyes remained shadowed. "Then let us see what destiny has woven for us, wizard of another world." And as they departed the ruins, Ghost padded silently behind, his eyes bright as the first stars. High above, the clouds parted for an instant, and in that narrow strip of light, a single feather of gold drifted down, glowing as it fell. The wind carried it southward, toward the Red Keep, toward Fire Reborn, and toward the heart of the prophecy Dumbledore had hidden from them all. They rode south for many days, through lands both scarred and fair. The war of men had ended, yet its ghosts lingered. Burnt fields stretched for miles, and broken banners hung like memories from blackened trees. Villages rebuilt from ashes, and people spoke in whispers of dragons and a queen reborn in fire. Harry traveled beside Daenerys Stormborn, though he still could not decide whether to trust her. She was unlike anyone he had met before, her voice calm, her eyes bright with a purpose that bordered on prophecy. She carried herself with a quiet strength, yet there was a sadness to her, the weight of one who had seen too much death and still believed in the promise of a better world. Ghost padded beside them, silent as snow. The soldiers who followed Daenerys, remnants of her unsullied and a few riders from the Dothraki tribes, watched the wolf warily, and none dared to touch him. Harry, for his part, kept his wand close. The phoenix's warmth pulsed within his chest, guiding him even as it whispered warnings he did not understand. On the 10th night of their journey, they camped beside a ruined holdfast by the banks of the Blackwater Rush. The air smelled faintly of smoke and salt. Daenerys sat before the fire, staring into the flames. "You said you came from another world," she said softly. "A world where magic thrives. Tell me, what is it like?" Harry thought for a moment. "It's beautiful," he said, "and terrible. There are wizards who use magic to heal, to protect, to build, and others who use it to destroy. It's a gift, but it always asks a price." She smiled faintly. "Then perhaps it is not so different from this one." He met her gaze. "Maybe not, but in my world, magic is part of everything. Here it feels wounded, like it's fighting to survive." Daenerys turned her eyes back to the flames. "When my dragons were born, the world seemed to breathe again. Magic stirred, old things woke. But the more fire I brought, the more the world burned." Harry said nothing. He knew that burden, the terrible line between salvation and ruin. In the silence that followed, the phoenix's mark upon his chest burned faintly, and he thought he heard Dumbledore's voice echo through the crackle of the fire. "Power is never given, Harry. It is lent, until the moment you must give it back." He looked southward. The horizon glowed faintly red, as if the very heart of the earth waited for them. 2 days later, they reached the gates of King's Landing. The city rose before them, half in ruin, half rebuilt. Towers gleamed new in the sunlight, while charred stones whispered of the dragon fire that had once consumed them. The Red Keep loomed high above, its crimson walls stark against the pale sky. Daenerys' soldiers marched ahead, though the people watched in wary silence. Many bowed, others turned away. "The queen who burned the city," one man muttered, too low for her to hear, but Harry heard. When they entered the great hall, the air grew heavy with heat. The massive throne of swords still stood at the far end, though its blades were half melted and blackened from dragon flame. Daenerys stopped at the base of the steps. "Here," she said, "is where it began and where it must end." Harry followed her gaze. "The dragon fire you spoke of, it's beneath us, isn't it?" She nodded. "The catacombs beneath the Red Keep hold the bones of the great dragons. Their fire never truly died. I can feel it still." They descended together through hidden passages, their footsteps echoing against ancient stone. Ghost walked ahead, his eyes glowing faintly in the dark. The air grew warmer as they went, thick with the scent of ash and metal. At last they reached the chamber. It was vast, carved from black stone. Bones the size of ships lay scattered across the floor, ribs and skulls of dragons long dead. And at the heart of the cavern burned a faint, steady light. The dragon fire. It was no flame of wood or oil, but pure essence, red and gold, alive with movement. It pulsed like a heart bound to the earth itself. Daenerys approached it slowly, awe flickering across her face. "I was born in fire," she whispered, "but this is the fire of the world." Harry felt the phoenix's warmth surge in answer. The two flames, one within him, one before him, recognized each other. The air trembled, and for a moment he saw the veil between worlds shimmer like a curtain of glass. He heard Dumbledore's voice again, faint but clear. "When frost and fire meet a second time, the bridge shall break forever, or be remade anew." Daenerys turned to him. "What must we do?" Harry stepped forward. "We join them, the phoenix's flame and the dragon's fire. That's what Dumbledore meant. It will heal the rift between our worlds, or destroy both if we fail." "And if we succeed?" she asked. "Then neither world will ever be the same." She smiled faintly, though sadness lingered in her eyes. "Then let us succeed, wizard." Together they knelt before the flame. Harry drew his wand. Daenerys raised her hands. The light grew, swirling faster, brighter, until it filled the chamber. Ghost howled, the sound echoing like thunder. The fire reached for them both. For a heartbeat, Harry saw the phoenix above him, wings of gold blazing wide. Behind it, a great dragon rose from the depths of the fire, its eyes burning like molten silver. The two creatures circled one another, a dance of life and death, of flame and purpose. Then they struck. The impact shattered the chamber. Heat and light engulfed everything. Harry felt himself lifted, weightless, his soul pulled through the storm. He glimpsed two worlds colliding, Westeros and his own, bound together by a single thread of light. He saw Hogwarts bathed in sunrise, and beyond it, a sky filled with dragons. When the light faded, he stood once more in the ashes of the Red Keep. The air was still. Daenerys lay a few steps away, her body motionless, her silver hair spread across the stone. Harry knelt beside her. She was breathing barely, but her skin glowed faintly with firelight. The mark of the phoenix had passed from his chest to hers, gleaming like molten gold. "Daenerys," he whispered. Her eyes fluttered open. "Is it done?" He looked around. The dragon fire was gone, but warmth lingered in the air, and from above, sunlight streamed through cracks in the ceiling. The city beyond was quiet, its smoke thinning. Somewhere far away, a phoenix's song rose, bright and clear. "Yes," he said softly, "it's done." She smiled faintly. "Then maybe now the world can be born again." Her eyes closed and she fell still. Harry sat beside her until the sun reached its zenith. The flames of prophecy had burned out, leaving only light and peace. Yet as he looked to the horizon, he felt a shift within the air, a hum of magic renewed, flowing freely between worlds once divided. The phoenix and the dragon had become one, and through them, the balance of both realms had been restored. But deep in the frozen north, beneath ice that would never fully melt, a faint crack split the silence once more. Something ancient and patient listened, waiting for the fire's warmth to fade. For every ending, Dumbledore had once said, was but the beginning of another story. And as the sun set over the reborn city, Harry Potter felt that truth stir once again, quiet and eternal, like the echo of wings beating through time. The light over King's Landing changed. Dawn poured like gold over the rooftops, glimmering on the broken towers of the Red Keep. Smoke still coiled faintly from the ruins, yet the air carried a new scent, clean, sharp, alive. The city that had once reeked of death now breathed again. Harry stood upon the highest balcony, the wind tugging at his cloak. Far below, the streets stirred with cautious life. The people had woken to find the skies clear for the first time in years. Merchants emerged from shuttered stalls. Children played beside fountains long dry, and bells rang from the sept, where silence had ruled since the war. The phoenix's flame had done more than close a rift. It had rekindled the pulse of magic within the world. Harry could feel it in the air, in the hum of the stones beneath his feet, in the way light shimmered along the edges of every shadow. Yet his heart was heavy. Daenerys lay in the chamber below, pale and still, her silver hair spread like moonlight upon the marble floor. The mark of the phoenix burned faintly upon her breast, pulsing with every shallow breath. He had tried to heal her, to summon the old spells of warmth and renewal that Dumbledore had taught him. But this wound was not of body or magic. It was the cost of union, the dragon's fire bound now with the phoenix's flame, her spirit stretched between worlds. He had seen sacrifice before, yet this felt different. She had chosen it willingly, knowing the world she saved might never remember her name without fear. A soft sound broke the quiet. Behind him, footsteps echoed upon the stone. Jon Snow stepped from the archway, his black cloak stirring in the morning wind. His face was older now, weathered by cold and grief, but his gray eyes still held that quiet strength Harry remembered from the wall. "You found her," Jon said, his voice low. Harry turned. "And you found me." Jon nodded. "The storm that shook the north. It led us here. The breach is gone, the dead have fallen still. Whatever you did, it worked." Harry looked down toward the sleeping queen. "Not without cost." Jon's gaze followed his. For a long moment he said nothing. Then quietly, "She always believed she was meant to change the world. Perhaps now she has." The two stood together in silence. The city below glowed with the warmth of new morning, yet Harry could feel the faint tremor beneath it, a reminder that even the brightest flame casts a shadow. "What will you do now?" Jon asked at last. Harry looked toward the horizon. "I'm not sure. The phoenix's fire isn't gone. I can feel it still, moving through me, through her. The worlds are connected now, mine and yours. I think that was always Dumbledore's plan." Jon's brows drew together. "And is that a good thing?" Harry hesitated. "It means there will be light in both realms again, but it also means the darkness will find its way between them." A gust of wind swept through the balcony, carrying the faint cry of a bird. High above, a single golden feather spiraled down through the air, glinting in the sunlight. Harry reached out and caught it. The warmth it carried was unmistakable. Fox's song, lingering in the world of men. He smiled faintly. "Where there's light, there's hope." Jon's gaze softened. "You sound like him, the old man." Harry chuckled softly. I suppose I learned from the best. They descended to the chamber where Daenerys rested. The air shimmered faintly with golden motes, as though the phoenix itself stood guard. Harry placed the feather upon her chest. The light brightened for a heartbeat, and she sighed. A whisper of breath that trembled like the first note of a song. She lives, Jon murmured. For now, Harry said. The flame keeps her between both worlds. She may never wake fully, or she may rise again when the world needs her most. Jon nodded slowly. Then she will not be forgotten. Outside, the city bells tolled anew. The people called for their queen, though none knew if she still lived. Harry turned toward the light. Someone must lead them. Jon shook his head. Not me. My time among men is done. The North calls me back to keep watch upon the wall. You'll need to rebuild it, Harry said. Even sealed, the rift can weaken again. Jon's expression was solemn. Then I'll build it stronger. Ice and fire side by side. The balance must hold. They clasped hands. A quiet promise between two guardians of worlds neither fully belonged to. When Jon departed, Harry lingered by the Queen's side one last time. The air around her shimmered faintly with warmth. He could almost hear Dumbledore's voice again, gentle as ever. The hardest thing, Harry, is to let go of what was meant to pass. He stood, lifting his cloak. Rest well, Daenerys Stormborn, he murmured. Your fire burns still. Then he turned toward the city beyond. The streets awaited, alive with new light. In the days that followed, word spread quickly. The wizard from the north, some called him the Fireborn, others the Wanderer, mended what war had broken. He purified wells with his spells, healed the wounded with a touch, and brought life back to the dead fields. The people whispered that perhaps the gods had returned, but Harry knew better. Magic was not the gift of gods. It was the echo of courage, the spark that lived in every soul, willing to act when fear demanded silence. Weeks passed. The phoenix's mark upon his chest dimmed, no longer burning but warm as a heartbeat. Ghost had gone north with Jon, and Harry walked alone through the halls of the Red Keep, now rebuilt. The world was healing. And yet sometimes, when night fell and the city slept, he felt the call again, a pull in the air, faint but insistent. It came not from the south or the sky, but from deep below, where the dragon fire once burned. He followed it one evening, torch in hand, down through the winding tunnels. The stones glowed faintly at his passing, remembering the heat of old flames. At the heart of the cavern where Daenerys had joined the dragon's fire, the air shimmered like water. A rift, small, delicate, alive, hung before him, no larger than a man's hand. Through it he glimpsed the faintest image of green hills, a lake, and the towers of Hogwarts gleaming beneath the stars. Home. He stood there for a long time, torn between two worlds. Then he heard the faint flutter of wings and looked up. From the shadows above, a small phoenix descended, no larger than a hawk, his feathers the color of dawn. It alighted upon his shoulder and sang a single, clear note. Harry smiled. So it's not over after all. The bird's light spread, touching the rift, widening it just enough for him to step through. He looked back once at the cavern, the bones, the firelight, the echoes of another world, and whispered, "Thank you." Then he stepped forward. The magic enveloped him in warmth and light. For a heartbeat, he saw both worlds, Westeros and the wizarding realm, interwoven by threads of flame and frost, held in delicate balance. And as the rift closed behind him, Harry Potter vanished from the world of men, leaving behind only a whisper of fire and the faint cry of a bird reborn. In time, tales would rise across both lands, of a flame that healed kingdoms, of a queen who dreamed in golden light, and of a boy who crossed worlds to mend what the gods themselves had broken. Some said the phoenix still flew over the north, its song heard in the coldest nights. Others swore that at dawn, when sunlight kissed the Red Keep's stones, they could see the shadow of a young man standing beside a silver-haired queen, watching the sunrise together. Whatever truth lay behind the stories, one thing remained certain. The fire had not died. It had simply changed hands. And far away, in a castle of stone and memory, a new phoenix sang above the towers of Hogwarts, its voice bright and endless, an echo of every world reborn. The wind over Hogwarts was calm that spring. Mist rolled from the black lake in soft ribbons, and the towers gleamed pale in the morning sun. The scars of war had long since faded. New banners flew from the ramparts, and the laughter of students once again filled the courtyards. Yet in the heart of the castle, where portraits whispered and time flowed differently, there lingered a feeling that something greater had changed. In the headmaster's office, Professor McGonagall sat behind the polished desk, her spectacles glinting as she studied a stack of parchment. The fire crackled quietly in the hearth, its warmth steady and familiar. She was older now, her hair streaked with silver, but her eyes remained as sharp as ever. A knock sounded at the door. "Enter," she called. The door opened softly, and Hermione Granger stepped inside, her robes trimmed with the insignia of the Department of Magical Cooperation. She'd grown into her role well, carrying both wisdom and calm authority. "You're early," McGonagall said, rising to greet her. "I couldn't wait," Hermione admitted. She set a worn leather satchel upon the desk and drew out a bundle wrapped in faded cloth. "It arrived this morning by owl. No signature, no address. Just a seal, the mark of the phoenix." McGonagall's breath caught. After all these years, Hermione unwrapped the bundle carefully. Inside lay a small crystal vial, glowing faintly with golden light. Within it something stirred, a flicker of fire, alive but gentle, like a heartbeat caught in glass. "What is it?" McGonagall whispered. Hermione smiled faintly. "I think it's a message." Before either could speak further, the light within the vial expanded. A voice filled the room, not from the air but from memory itself. "Hello, Professor." "Hello, Hermione." Harry's voice. It was softer than before, older perhaps, but unmistakably his. "If you're hearing this," the voice continued, "then I suppose I've been gone for some time. Don't worry, this isn't a farewell. It's a promise." The light swirled, and above the vial shimmered an image, Harry standing beside a silver-haired woman beneath a dawn sky, their silhouettes framed by fire and snow. "I crossed worlds," he said. "The breach is sealed, but the connection remains. Magic flows freely between realms now, carried by the flame of the phoenix. I can feel it, alive everywhere. When Hogwarts breathes, the north stirs. When dragons take wing, our wands grow warm. The balance holds." Hermione's throat tightened, but she smiled through the tears that welled in her eyes. "Tell the students," Harry's voice went on, "that courage is the oldest magic of all. That friendship endures beyond the borders of life and death, and that sometimes the light we seek lies not in wands or prophecies, but in one another." The image flickered, then steadied. I don't know if I'll ever return. The Phoenix's fire isn't mine to command. It belongs to both worlds now. But if you ever see its flame, know that I'm near, watching, waiting, and grateful. The light dimmed. Only the faint warmth of the vial remained, pulsing like a living thing. McGonagall leaned back slowly. He's alive. Hermione nodded. Somewhere, yes, beyond what we can see. They sat in silence for a moment. Then McGonagall rose, her voice firm, though her eyes shone with emotion. This belongs in the Hall of Heroes, beside his parents Dumbledore and the others. The students should remember not only his victories, but his choices. Hermione agreed quietly. He always chose what was right, even when it wasn't easy. That evening, the great hall was filled with candlelight and song. Professors, students, and ghosts alike gathered beneath the floating torches as Hermione placed the glowing vial upon a pedestal at the front of the room. It bathed the hall in warm golden light. For a moment, every flame in the castle flared higher. Portraits leaned forward in wonder, and even the ghosts felt warmth upon their translucent faces. From somewhere unseen, faint but unmistakable, came the call of a phoenix. The students whispered to one another, but Hermione simply closed her eyes and smiled. Far away beyond the Veil of Worlds, Harry stood upon a hill of emerald grass, watching the sun rise over a land he did not entirely know. The air was rich with life, strange trees bearing crimson leaves, rivers glowing faintly with starlight. Magic thrummed through the earth beneath his boots. Beside him, Daenerys walked in silence, her hair catching the dawn. She no longer looked fragile. The mark of the phoenix upon her chest shone bright and sure. "Where are we?" she asked softly. "Between," Harry said. "Not one world or the other. A bridge." She smiled faintly. "You always were one for bridges," he chuckled. "Someone has to keep them from falling." They walked together until they reached the crest of the hill. Before them stretched a valley of light, dotted with ruins that glimmered faintly, half from his world, half from hers. Dragons soared in the distance, their wings scattering sparks across the sky. And in the farthest horizon stood a tower, white as bone, its highest window gleaming like a star. "Do you think they'll remember us?" Daenerys asked. Harry looked toward the horizon where the two suns met, not as we were, but maybe as what we became. "And what's that?" He turned to her, smiling. "Keepers of the fire." For a moment, silence stretched between them, peaceful content. Then a soft cry rose from the sky. A great bird descended through the morning light, its feathers a blend of crimson and gold, its eyes wise and kind. Fawkes reborn again. He landed before them, bowing his head. Flames danced along his wings, but they did not burn, they shone. Harry reached out and touched his feathers. Warmth flooded him, not the searing power of sacrifice, but a gentler light, the promise of renewal. Daenerys stepped forward as well. Together they laid their hands upon the phoenix's breast. At their touch, the world brightened. The tower's windows glowed. The rivers shimmered. Dragons wheeled and cried above, and from the phoenix's song came echoes of two worlds, one of wands and castles, the other of swords and crowns, singing as one. When the light faded, they stood hand in hand. The phoenix circled them once before soaring skyward, leaving a trail of golden fire that lingered in the air like a promise. Harry looked to Daenerys. "I think this is where we're meant to be." She nodded. "Then let us keep watch." They turned toward the valley as the new day rose, a day belonging to neither world alone, but to both. bound by courage, by fire, and by the will to begin again. And so the prophecy of Trelawney was fulfilled, not in destruction, but in rebirth. The boy who lived had crossed the bounds of life and legend, and in doing so he had lit a flame that would never die. High above, Fox sang once more, a song of dawn and endless hope, carried on the winds between worlds, echoing forever through the halls of Hogwarts and the frozen peaks of the north alike. Years drifted as softly as snow upon the lands between. Time no longer ruled as it once had. The suns rose when they wished, and the stars burned brighter than before. In this realm that touched both magic and memory, Harry Potter lived quietly, as one might live inside a story told long after its ending. He had built no fortress nor throne. His home was a cottage of smooth stone set beside a clear stream, its walls wrapped in ivy that gleamed faintly gold at twilight. Smoke curled gently from its chimney, and the air smelled of cedar and rain. Often dragons wheeled high above, their shadows passing like clouds. Sometimes, when the light bent just right, Hogwarts' distant silhouette shimmered faintly upon the horizon, as though reflected through the veil. Daenerys lived not far upon a ridge crowned with white blossoms. She had planted them herself, the first living things to bloom in this strange world. Though the fire in her veins still glowed, it no longer burned. She had found peace in creation, not conquest. Together they tended to the land, healing what was broken between their worlds. With each act of kindness, the realm grew greener. With each spark of laughter, the air grew warm again. Yet beneath that peace, both knew that the work of fire was never done. One evening, as twilight spread across the hills, Harry stood by the river's edge, skipping flat stones across the glassy surface. Each one left behind a ripple of light, as though the water itself remembered magic. He felt the phoenix's warmth stir faintly beneath his skin, a reminder that the bridge between worlds still pulsed within him. Behind him, Daenerys approached, her white cloak fluttering in the breeze. "You feel it too," she said. He nodded. "The veil is restless. There's change coming." She knelt beside him, her gaze calm. "You think it's danger?" "Perhaps," he said. "Or perhaps something waking. Every age has its turning." They watched the river together. In its depths shimmered visions of both their homes, the great hall of Hogwarts glowing with candlelight, and the red keep gleaming golden under a clear sky. For the first time the images overlapped, no longer separated by shadow. Daenerys smiled faintly. "Maybe it means the worlds are learning to share their light. Or their burdens," Harry replied. She glanced at him sidelong. "You sound like Dumbledore." He laughed quietly. "I hear him sometimes, when the wind shifts. He'd be telling me not to linger on what's been mended, but to look ahead." Her smile softened. "And what do you see ahead?" Harry took a breath. "A world that doesn't need saving, but I doubt I'll live to see it." "You already have," she said. They sat in comfortable silence as night fell. Stars bloomed one by one above, mirrored in the water below. Somewhere distant, the faint cry of a phoenix echoed through the valley. Days passed, marked not by sun or moon, but by moments of wonder. Children appeared sometimes, wanderers from both realms, slipping through the thin places between worlds. Harry welcomed them with tea and stories. He taught them small magics, how to conjure warmth from nothing, how to listen to the whispers of trees. Daenerys showed them how to care for dragons whose eggs she guarded deep in the valley caves. They belong to both worlds now, she often said, like us. The first child to hatch one was a boy of 10, his laughter bright as firelight. When the tiny dragon climbed upon his shoulder, its eyes shimmered gold and green, a mingling of phoenix flame and dragon fire. The sight filled Harry with hope, but as the years deepened, the phoenix's mark upon his chest began to fade. Its glow dimmed, and with it came a weariness that no rest could ease. He felt himself drawn more often to the river's edge, where the veils shone like liquid glass. One evening, as Daenerys prepared the lamps in her garden, she found him standing there, the wind tugging at his cloak. "It's calling again," he said softly. "I think my part in this story is ending." Her eyes glistened. "You can't mean to leave." He smiled, but it was tinged with sorrow. "Everything in me belongs to that other world. I've stayed long enough to see this one healed, but the phoenix doesn't sleep here. It's waiting beyond." Daenerys stepped closer. "Then let me come with you." He shook his head gently. "No. This realm needs a guardian of its own, and none better than you. You are both fire and mercy. The dragons listen to you, and the land blooms where you walk. You are its heart now." She turned away, fighting the tears that glimmered like dew upon her lashes. "You always choose the harder path, because it's the one that matters." From the darkness above, a light flared, a streak of gold and crimson cutting through the sky. Fawkes descended, larger than before, radiant with the fire of countless dawns. His wings brushed the ground, setting the flowers alight without burning them. Harry laid a hand upon the phoenix's breast. "Old friend," he whispered, "ready to fly again?" The bird bowed its head, and warmth flowed through the air, gentle but infinite. Daenerys reached for him, her hand trembling. "If you go, what happens to this world?" Harry turned, his eyes reflecting the starlight. "It will endure. The flame is not mine anymore. It's in the children, the dragons, and every spark that chooses to live rather than fade." He took her hand, pressed it to his heart, and the last of the phoenix's light passed from him to her. The mark flared upon her palm, a golden sigil of fire entwined with wings. "Now it's yours," he said. "Guard it well." Daenerys could not speak. She only nodded, tears shining like molten silver. Harry mounted the phoenix, its feathers glowing brighter with each beat of its wings. As it rose, the valley below filled with golden light. Flowers bent toward him, dragons cried from their caves, and the river shone like molten sunlight. Daenerys stood watching, her cloak billowing in the warm wind. "Goodbye, Harry Potter," she whispered, "keeper of the fire." He smiled down at her. "There are no goodbyes between worlds, only journeys." Then Fawkes spread his wings wide, and together they soared upward through the clouds, through the shimmering veil of light. For a moment he saw everything. The two worlds joined in harmony, magic flowing like rivers between them. He saw Hogwarts shining beneath the stars, the north glistening under eternal frost, dragons wheeling over new fields, and the faces of those he loved watching from afar. Then the light closed around him, gentle as sleep. When morning came, Daenerys stood alone by the river. The air was still, and upon the ground lay a single feather, gold shot through with red. She picked it up, holding it close. The mark on her hand glowed faintly in answer, and as the suns rose over the horizon, their light catching in her hair, a smile touched her lips. The fire had passed, but its warmth remained, living, eternal, waiting for the next heart brave enough to bear it. In the realms of men and magic alike, stories spread of a boy who rode a bird of flame into the dawn, and of a queen who guarded a valley where dragons dreamed. Some said they were myths, others memories, but in quiet moments when firelight flickered just so one could hear the faint echo of wings and a voice carried upon the wind, gentle and sure, there will always be another dawn. Part 12. It was the smell of parchment and rain that reached him first. A sound followed, the shuffle of boots on old floors, the faint ring of laughter. Harry opened his eyes to see the great hall of Hogwarts spread out before him. Every table gleamed, candles hovered, and the banners of the 4 houses rippled softly in the dawn breeze. He was standing at the doors. The Phoenix's light had borne him home. For a heartbeat, he feared he was dreaming, yet the warmth on his skin was real, and the murmur of voices came from students alive and laughing. It was a world untouched by frost, safe and whole. The breach was gone. From the staff table, a familiar figure rose. Hermione's hair caught the candlelight, and her face broke into stunned wonder. "Harry," she whispered. He smiled, unable to find words. Ron was beside her a heartbeat later, older, but grinning the same boyish grin. "I told her," he said hoarsely. "I told her you'd find your way back." They crossed the hall in a rush. Hermione's arms went around him first, fierce and trembling. Ron clapped him on the back, hard enough to drive the breath from his chest. "I missed you," Harry managed, his voice thick. "We thought you were gone for good," Hermione said. "The message you sent, your voice in that vial, it was all we had." Harry looked around, his chest tightening. Every stone, every flicker of candlelight felt like a heartbeat. "How long?" he asked. 10 years, Ron said quietly. "You vanished 10 years ago." 10 years. In the realm between worlds, time had flowed differently, yet Hogwarts stood unchanged, a haven untouched by decay. From the shadows of the hall came another figure, Professor McGonagall, her eyes wet despite her best attempt at composure. She studied him for a long moment, then smiled. "You've come home at last." Harry bowed his head slightly. "I hope I'm still welcome." She laughed softly. "Harry Potter, you have never been unwelcome here." That night there was a feast unlike any other. The tables overflowed with food, the air filled with chatter and song. Students whispered in awe of the man who had once defeated death itself and now returned from worlds unknown. But Harry cared little for titles or tales. He watched his friends, his school, and felt the quiet peace of belonging. When the hall emptied, he slipped away to the astronomy tower. The night sky was clear and the stars seemed brighter than ever. From the pocket of his cloak he drew the golden feather, the last gift from Daenerys. Its glow was faint but steady, pulsing in rhythm with his heartbeat. "You kept your promise," he murmured. A soft flutter answered. Fawkes appeared upon the railing, older yet eternal, his eyes gleaming with quiet pride. "Thank you," Harry said, "for carrying me this far." The phoenix trilled once, a sound both joyful and sad, then lifted into the sky. Its song lingered long after it vanished, echoing among the towers like a lullaby. In the months that followed, Harry took up residence at Hogwarts again, though he refused any title. He taught no formal class, kept no office. Instead, he became a quiet wanderer of halls and gardens, speaking with students, guiding them when they strayed into shadows of doubt. They called him the Keeper, a name he never corrected. He would sit by the lake at dawn, the same place where he and his friends had once shared childish dreams, Sometimes he saw reflections in the water, dragons gliding through faraway skies, a silver-haired woman walking among flowers. The worlds remained connected, though hidden from sight. Hermione often joined him there. One morning, as sunlight scattered across the ripples, she said, "You never told us what happened there, between the worlds." Harry watched the water. It's hard to explain. It wasn't a place so much as a choice, a promise kept. Fire met frost, and both learned to live. "Did you see Dumbledore again?" she asked. He smiled faintly. "Often, but he never spoke of endings, only beginnings." Ron arrived later with a bundle of parchment and 2 steaming mugs of cocoa. "You know," he said, grinning, "the Ministry's still trying to figure out how to regulate all this new magic. Dragon showing up in the Hebrides, a phoenix spotted over the Alps. Chaos, mate. You'd love it." Harry chuckled. "I think I'll leave the Ministry to you two." They sat together until the sun climbed high, warmth spreading through the air. For the first time in years, Harry felt truly at peace. As the seasons turned, strange wonders began to appear across the wizarding world. Forests once silent thrummed with life again. Ancient creatures, thought extinct, returned. Wizards and witches discovered spells long lost, not as weapons but as songs, harmonies of magic that healed rather than harmed. At Hogwarts, the new students spoke of seeing a bird of fire soaring above the towers whenever courage stirred in their hearts. And when they asked who it was that watched from the lake, smiling faintly, as the dawn rose, the portraits would whisper, "He's the one who bridges worlds, the one who kept the fire alive." One winter evening, Harry found himself alone in the library. Snow drifted against the tall windows, muffling the world outside. Upon an open table lay an old, forgotten prophecy sphere, dusty, cracked, yet faintly glowing. He turned it gently in his hand, and the voice of Trelawney drifted once more, faint but unbroken. "The boy who lived shall walk beyond the world of men where fire and frost entwine. He shall kindle the dawn for those who dream, and though his name fade, his flame shall never die." Harry smiled. "You were right after all, Professor." He placed the orb upon the shelf between the histories of heroes and the tomes of myth. Then he walked to the window, watching the snow fall over the forbidden forest. Somewhere beyond that horizon, in the land between worlds, a dragon cried, a low, distant sound, more beautiful than mournful. The phoenix's answer followed, bright and pure, echoing across the night. Harry closed his eyes and breathed deeply. "We did it," he whispered, "both of us." And for a heartbeat, he thought he felt her beside him again. Daenerys, her warmth like sunlight after winter. The mark on his chest glowed faintly once more. Below, the lake shimmered under the moonlight, reflecting both stars and fire. In that reflection, 2 worlds lived as one, bound not by prophecy, but by the will of those who dared to believe in its promise. When morning came, students found fresh footprints in the snow, leading from the castle gates to the edge of the lake, and beside them the faint imprint of wings. No one knew where he went after that night. Some said he simply walked into the sunrise and vanished, leaving behind peace in his wake. Others swore that when danger stirs and hope wanes, a figure with eyes of green and a cloak of gray will appear, carrying the light of a new dawn. But within the tower where the phoenix's song still echoed through the stone, one truth remained. The bridge endured, the fire lived on, and the keeper of the flame watched over both worlds, still unseen but never far. The years turned as softly as pages in an ancient tome. The seasons came and went across the lands of magic and men, and both worlds, once sundered, grew strange and wondrous together. Old boundaries faded, and new legends rose in their place. In the high north, the wall stood again, taller and brighter than before, its stones imbued with living flame. It no longer divided the living from the dead, but the realms of shadow from the realm of light. Upon its ramparts, Jon Snow kept his long vigil, gray-eyed and solemn, though now the ravens sang to him in tongues of both ice and fire. At his side prowled Ghost, older and vast, his fur glimmering with faint embers. To the south, King's Landing had become a city reborn. The Red Keep rose once more, crowned with towers of white stone instead of iron, and beneath its rebuilt halls, the dragon fire that had once slept now hummed gently, a steady warmth that healed, not destroyed. Daenerys Stormborn ruled there, her hair silver as moonlight, the mark of the phoenix still glowing faintly on her palm. Few dared speak of how she returned from her long sleep, but all knew that a great light had been seen upon the river one dawn, and that when the glow faded, the queen stood again upon the shore, crowned not by conquest, but by mercy. She ruled differently now. The dragons were no longer weapons, but guardians. The people of the free cities spoke of her as the Dragon Mother, whose fire brought rain to the dry lands and warmth to the barren hills. And when she looked to the north, she sometimes thought she saw the faintest shadow of a man walking upon the horizon, a figure wrapped in gray, the wind always at his back. But she did not call out. Some promises are too sacred to disturb. Across the sea, in the realm of wizards, Hogwarts flourished as never before. Students from every corner of both worlds came to learn within its walls. Witches with dragon fire in their blood, young men who spoke to wolves in dreams, and children born under strange stars who could call both phoenix and dragon by name. Under Hermione's guidance as headmistress, and with Ron at her side as a defense professor whose lessons were equal parts laughter and courage, the school thrived. Even the portraits of Dumbledore and Snape had ceased their bickering long enough to agree that the new age was one worth guarding. Yet every generation of students whispered the same tale, that when danger grew close, a faint light appeared upon the lake, a fire that walked like a man, and those who followed it into the mist sometimes returned with eyes bright from wonder and tales of a gentle voice that said, "Courage, always." None could say for certain what became of Harry Potter. Some claimed he had vanished into legend, crossing once more between the realms to keep the balance from faltering. Others believed he had become part of the Phoenix itself, his soul forever woven into the cycle of rebirth that bound the worlds together. A few swore they had seen him wandering the edge of the forbidden forest, his cloak stirring in the dawn wind, his wand glowing faintly with living fire. Hermione never confirmed nor denied the rumors. She would simply smile when asked and say, "Some bridges are not meant to be crossed back." One autumn, long after the last of Harry's generation had faded into story, a new student arrived at Hogwarts, a quiet boy with untidy black hair and eyes green as fresh leaves. His surname was Rivers, and no one knew quite where he came from. The Sorting Hat hesitated long before declaring him a Gryffindor. That winter, the boy began to dream of a valley filled with light where dragons slept beneath blossoming trees, and a woman with silver hair smiled as she watched over them. A great bird of fire perched upon her shoulder, singing to the stars. When he told Hermione of his dream, she only listened in silence, her expression unreadable. Then she rose, led him to the window that overlooked the lake, and said softly, "Dreams are how magic remembers its promises." That night the boy woke to find the window open and a single golden feather resting upon his bedside table. He kept it always, far beyond, in the hidden realm between worlds. The valley of the Phoenix still glowed. The rivers ran clear. The trees whispered in the tongue of dragons, and at its heart stood a single tower of white stone, the Tower of Dawn. There, upon its highest balcony, two figures kept watch over all that was and would be. Daenerys stood with the wind in her hair, her gaze distant but peaceful. Beside her, Harry leaned upon the railing, his cloak stirring in the warm air, though he appeared unchanged by years. There was a stillness to him now, a quiet contentment that needed no name. "You feel it?" she asked. He nodded. "Always. Every spark, every whisper of magic, they're all connected. When a child lights a wand in Hogwarts, or when a dragon breathes fire in the north, I feel it." She smiled. "Then we did it. We made the bridge." He turned to her, his eyes shining. "No, you made the bridge. I only walked across." "You never were good at taking credit," she teased gently. "And you never were good at resting," he replied, smiling. From below came the soft trill of the phoenix, Fawkes perched upon the tower's edge, his feathers glowing in the twilight. Beyond him, the suns of two worlds burned upon the horizon, one golden, one pale. Between them lay the river of light that bound every story ever told. "Will they remember us?" she asked after a time. Harry's gaze followed the line where sky met water. "Maybe not by name, but they'll feel it. The warmth that comes when hope should have frozen. That's enough." She leaned against him, her voice barely above the wind. "And if the darkness returns?" He glanced at Fawkes, who lifted his wings in answer, scattering sparks into the air. "Then the flame will rise again. It always does." They stood together as night fell, the valley below bathed in silver light. Somewhere far away, a child in Hogwarts raised a wand and conjured a single spark of fire. In King's Landing, a dragon stirred from its sleep and exhaled a plume of gold. The two lights met somewhere unseen, weaving through time and dream alike. Harry smiled faintly, feeling it pass through him, a pulse of endless life. The wind carried the sound of Fawkes's song across the valley, a melody of beginnings, of worlds made whole. Daenerys took Harry's hand, and together they watched as the first stars of the new night appeared. And thus the prophecy was fulfilled, not in war, but in harmony. Not in the triumph of one world over another, but in the joining of both through flame, courage, and love that defied the bounds of life and death. The boy who lived had become the keeper of eternity's dawn. The Dragon Queen, the guardian of the living flame. Their story would fade into legend, then into myth, and finally into the quiet truth that underlies all magic, that from light and shadow, from fire and frost, from ending and beginning, there is always rebirth. And somewhere on a wind that touches every realm, the phoenix still sings, bright, eternal, unending.